Hey guys, just to let you know, all the music's been pulled from this episode for YouTube copyright reasons. Links to all the music will be in the description. If you want to hear the full episode with audio of the music included, check out Christmas Clatter podcast on all podcast apps. Enjoy! Well, joining me here on Christmas Clatter is Evan Mazunik. If you're a real avid listener here at Christmas Clatter, you will recognize that name. He was part of our musical extravaganza back in December. He had a Christmas album, Amid the Cold, out, and Evan is a Denver area jazz pianist, and I really enjoyed his Christmas album. I'm kind of a mark for the piano in general, and just some smooth jazz Christmas melodies that kind of relax you and help you enjoy your holidays. And we'll get more about Evan in a little bit, but in passing an email in Evan, I asked him about doing an episode on Vince Guaraldi and his contribution to Christmas music, and held on to that idea for the past 8 months or so. And here we are. Evan, thanks so much for joining me here at Christmas Clatter.
It's a blast. Thanks, Todd. Thanks for having me on, man.
Well, thanks for being here. Let's just go ahead and jump right into Vince Guaraldi, and we'll circle back. I'll tell you what, we'll call it audible. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, so people know.
Sure. I mean, we were talking before hitting record here. I grew up in Iowa, played piano since I was 4. It was really for hand-eye coordination, so I'm pretty nearsighted. And then I tried trumpet in middle school, but braces killed my brass career. So I moved to New York after getting a few pieces of paper in piano and jazz. Had the real School of Hard Knocks in New York, freelanced there for a while. And then I've been here in Denver coming up on 8 years now, which is amazing. And I do a lot of composing, arranging, direct a church choir, do my own independent music as well on the side. So it's just fun to be here. And as far as, it's funny that we're talking about Christmas here in July. No, wait, it's August. Hello, yes. I'm still, I'm not in this month yet.
Oh yeah. Well, it's early.
For sure. But it's great. I'm thinking about Christmas music for some programming with the choir lead. Mm-hmm. And when you just asked to set this up, it was fun to think cool thoughts it was like over 90 here recently. So it's nice to sort of step into the Christmas vibe for a little bit. Anyway, but that's a little bit about my background. And
that is really great. Playing since you was 4. I don't know if there's anything I was doing at 4 that I'm still doing now, but
same here, brother. Same here. Yeah.
But let's jump into Vince Guaraldi. You are self-proclaimed, I want to say, monster fan of Vince, and I can't say I blame you. Would you say in the general public that he might be the most well-known jazz musician?
I think one of the most, even if people don't know him by name, as soon as you play a little right, everybody just ears up and they know that. And as soon as you get around Christmas time, if you play anything remotely jazzy, people start thinking Charlie Brown. So even though his name might not be recognized by everybody, his music is, of course, well known. And he just really defined the landscape. You can't really play Christmas music with a jazz feel without paying some homage to Vince and sort of how he said it,
Yeah. What? Now, this might be a big general question. What sets Vince apart from other jazz musicians?
I think his willingness to be not simplistic, but simple. Sometimes that's a loaded term, and sometimes people throw that around like an insult. But he can make a really transparent line, and that's a geeky sort of musical way of just saying he can just take even 2 or 3 notes and pick the right notes and have something really emotionally direct, almost akin to like folk music or some folk music, where the beauty and power of that is just in its like directness and its emotional honesty and its simplicity. Because jazz musicians love to get complicated, right? And they love to stack chords on top of chords with other chords and substitute things. And and I love that too. There's something to be said for just sometimes keeping it real simple and direct. So I think that's probably one of his biggest appeals.
Right. Well, to let you know, in case you don't, I call myself a bass player loosely. I've been playing for over 20 years now. Electric bass, and I stayed away from jazz for a long time because it just felt like there was too much complication in it.
Right.
And then, but Vince Guaraldi and the trio just kind of opened. You're right. It kind of opened that door to playing more simples. Doesn't. That's a terrible word, because simple you think is easy. It's not.
No.
So
sometimes I love music that sounds simple, and then when you try to play it, you realize that simplicity was a hard fought simplicity, right? There's the simplicity when you're like a 4-year-old and you can only play a few notes, right? But then there's that simplicity on the far side of like your life experience. I don't know. Right. Where all of a sudden you've got something you can say with that simplicity, but you had to sort of work through all the complexity and sort of sometimes get it out of your system and come back home in a way. Yeah.
So, I've told this story a lot on the podcast, and for those that listen every episode, you're going to hear at least one more time today. But back in late March, early April, late March, early April 2020, when the pandemic was all hot and heavy. There was one time I came in from work and came down here to where I sit, where I'm recording with my tree on, and had my tree on, and I have a Charlie Brown Christmas on vinyl. And I sat there and I sat there and I flipped it 4 different times and just kept it going, and just kind of let the whole vibe and tone just kind of wash over me. And it was just kind of, it was real stress relieving, and the album always had a special place in my heart. But, kind of in that moment of, early pandemic, when things were so unclear and unsure, I'm a letter carrier by trade, so I don't stay home. I go out and walk up and down the neighborhood, and so, there was just a lot going on. Wasn't sure. It's just like that album just was like, I always just say it just washed over me, that night, and just kind of gave me, a lot of just kind of de-stressed listening to it,
That's beautiful. And I admire your self-care. I think I spent that time of 2020 just sort of like curled up in a ball of like crushing anxiety. So good of you to like just soak in that music. And on vinyl too. That's cool.
Yes. Yeah.
I
collect vinyl. I start with Christmas vinyl. I'm like, I'm only going to start Christmas vinyl. Well, that's all changed. Now I collect whatever I like on vinyl.
Ooh, so. I don't have Charlie Brown, the soundtrack on vinyl, but we've started to, my wife and I, collect some beloved Christmas albums and put that out on our record player, and it's fun. The nostalgia and the I don't know, just having to sit down and listen to a whole side of a record, and not sort of flip through or fast forward or skip a track. Just that. You're making something in the kitchen and you put on that record and you just sort of exhale.
It revived. I've talked with people about this, and I have this theory that vinyl, you can argue if it's technically a better sound or not. I don't really care. I like it.
Right.
But I will say that vinyl reactivates people's ability to actively listen. To music,
right?
Because you're not going to be like, I'm not crazy about this song, skip. I'm not crazy about this song, but I got to get through it, to the next one, and then before you know it, you're loving that song. you know,
Yeah,
and you'll
that's
catch
what.
something. Yeah.
Sorry, that's what I love about podcasts too. It's like I may not want to sit and watch like a 40-minute uh YouTube, but I may just get impatient and click on what's on the side. But
Uh-huh.
like if I find a podcast I like, I'll just put it on and just sort of sit with it.
Uh-huh.
And I like those sort of longer forms.
Right.
It's it's a dying art, it feels like, that's being revived to like sit and listen and just be present.
Right. I completely agree. Just that being actively listening, to something and have it there uninterrupted. Well, Evan, you picked out a few songs you kind of wanted to talk about to highlight
Right. Uh-huh.
Vince in the album. The first one you picked out is uh, one of the more iconic on the
Mm-hmm.
album.
Right.
We'll probably get to the most well known later
Sure.
on, but Christmas Time is Here. On the album, it's like a
Mm-hmm.
6 minute 40-second instrumental,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a little bit at the end that has some a little bit of like a children's choir,
Right.
giving it some lyrics. Both are great. I love the instrumental version
Mm-hmm.
because it's so much longer, and it takes some different twists and turns. So, what about Christmas Time is Here that made it stand out to you enough to include it on this list to highlight Vince and what kind of made his Christmas music so great?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, sometimes the best music for a visual medium or a film is something that won't sort of take the foreground or support. I'm trying to think, is it skating, right?
Mhm.
Where it's
Yep.
just that it's a beautiful song, but
Yep.
it's just sort of setting a vibe and supporting the image of what's on screen. And you don't want that music to be too, I guess, forward
Right.
or take center stage, right? But
Right.
Christmas Time is Here. For me, it just stands out. It stands alone as like a classic jazz ballad. I mean, it could be right up there with Body and Soul or something, really, as a recognizable, beautiful song that could work even as an instrumental. I
Right.
mean, legend has it that the lyrics were scribbled, last minute,
Yes.
and I think it shows that there was a strong instrument underneath before any words were added. But
Right.
that, and even just the chords, like the that sort of really, really jazzy chord, just that sort of tension and release. That right.
Uh-huh.
There's a nice sort of ebb and flow in the harmonies of just like a sort of a squeeze and a relax and a tension and a release that I
Yeah.
just find just really enchanting.
Yeah. The song, it kind of mimics another Christmas classic, Sleigh Ride. That was an
Yeah.
instrumental before it had lyrics.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But Sleigh Ride was around several more years before lyrics were added, because this
Right.
was done fairly quickly after it was written. So
I hadn't thought about that. That's a fun comparison. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, this one, I just love that melody, that Christmas. It's
Mm-hmm.
the thing I love about this song is the space, in the
Mm,
song, and it just kind of it has so much space in it. It's so
right.
it's one of those. This song will melt you if you start listening to the space in it.
Mm,
You know,
that's a good point. That right, and just sort of
yeah,
hangs every few
yeah,
bars.
yeah,
Yeah, ba 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 ba. And it just
yeah,
sits there a little bit.
yeah,
You ponder for a second. Yeah.
yeah. I have a short audio clip of this song. I want to
Yeah.
play you, and where this is in the song. They go through the Christmas Time is Here, the melody kind of main line, I guess, for about a minute and a half, and
Mm-hmm.
then Vince plays like a minute and a half piano solo, and then he completely drops, and there's a minute and a half of this, and I don't know, this is 15, 20 seconds, something like that.
Uh-huh.
This is the end of the solo right here, and then he just drops, and it's just a minute and a half of this. Now, I don't do music for a living, never have, but to me, that takes a lot of gusto to
Yeah.
put that much space in the song, you know.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of players, myself as well, can be guilty sometimes of playing out of anxiety
Mhm.
instead of intention,
Yeah.
right?
And
And
that goes on for a minute and a half.
man, yeah, that does take some real commitment. I love that. Not only to give his bass player a little
Mhm.
space, right, to be
Yes.
featured and be a more of a like a team player,
Uh-huh.
but also just to let it sit and not be in a hurry. And it's like a great public speaker. They could have the worst content,
Right.
but if they add some dramatic pauses, I mean, you can go overboard like a William
Yeah.
Shatner or something, but or a
Right.
Christopher Walken. But
Right.
yesterday, I went down to the mailbox and there were 15 owls on the top of my mailbox. I mean, whatever. I'm just being
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Right.
But that
Yeah.
pausing sort of adds
Yep.
some suspense and
It
makes you
does.
sort of lean in. So that's a
Uh-huh.
great example. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, that's the song that just kind of, it might, if I remember correctly, it might be the first song on the album. I can't remember off the top of my head. I should know that.
I don't have the track order in front of
So,
me. Yeah. And
um,
it's interesting. I didn't really, I got to confess, I didn't grow up with this. I know a lot of people have this as like
uh-huh.
some deep nostalgic memories of childhood.
Yeah.
It wasn't really
Yeah.
in my blood until later in life. Like I got, I started playing like sort of piano lounges, and people would request these songs, and then I
Uh-huh.
started teaching private lessons, and every kid wanted to learn Linus and Lucy, and
Uh-huh.
then really like trying to get some family rhythms. My wife and I are raising our 5-year-old son,
Right.
and putting that record on and sort of experiencing Christmas through his eyes and through his
Oh yeah.
ears. That's where it really started to even deepen that affection for this music even more. So it's been like I've been a latecomer compared to some people with Vince's music, but I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually the last song on the first side with
Oh,
Christmas Time Is Here with the vocal arrangements, the first song on the second side.
yeah. I was totally geeking out because I love to research, and that I didn't realize that the boys choir on the Christmas Time on the
Uh-huh.
vocal version uh, came out of his work. He'd, I think, just gotten done with a jazz mass, which was sort of like revolutionary at the time. So he's working with, I think, some like Episcopal church
Right.
somewhere in California, and had them at his, that connection
Yeah.
to get that boys choir in there. So maybe you know more about this than I
Yeah.
do, but
Glendale, I think it's Glendale, California, is where
nice. Okay.
they recorded the album at.
Uh-huh.
So, um, this was, early 60s, early mid 60s. This was, jazz was kind of having a real mainstream type of revival at this time, and there was getting, be a lot of jazz influences in music through, Motown and the Wrecking Crew out in LA, and some of the jazz stuff was, starting to cross over a little bit more into pop. And
Right.
John Coltrane was reaching a level of popularity and things like that. And
Yeah, jazz has always for me
yeah.
had a real interesting sort of dialogue with
Mhm.
other music, and
Yeah.
I mean ebbed and flowed in popularity, but I mean
Right.
even to this day, like jazz and hip hop are in conversation. But
Right.
back in the day, jazz and Broadway
Yep.
were in conversation, like musically speaking, and that's two
Right.
genres. And I think it's just fun to watch that interaction.
Yeah.
And I think Vincent, I think he got the gig. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because I mean, he had won a Grammy, and his music was getting played a lot on the radio, and the
Right.
producer heard his music and says, "Oh, I want this guy to do some work."
Yeah. That's absolutely what happened. In fact, Motown, the Funk Brothers, the studio band for Motown, they would play
Mm-hmm.
jazz clubs in Detroit all night long, and then they go to the studio, and people would come in with songs they written, and they're like, "Hey, you remember that one jazz, thing we did like this? Let's do it for this song." And that's how a lot of the music was written for those Motown hits. Was they were
I
just
love just how in love with music
yeah.
they all were, and just music was music, and
Yeah.
it was whatever the genre and whatever the gig was. It's just, you just let it all sort of stew together.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And you, another song, the other song you picked out and you alluded to earlier was a song that really got him the Peanuts gig itself was Cast Your Fate to the Wind. And to be honest with you, if I've heard this song before, I didn't remember it. So I listened to it a few times, for the first time and listened to it. And I absolutely fell in love with it. In fact, he won a Grammy for Best Original Jazz composition in '63.
Okay.
And it was a B-side of a samba bossa nova record. But in the US, the disc jockeys weren't that big on the bossa nova side, so they played Vince's Cast Your Fate to the Wind. And then that's where Lee Mendelson, who was producing Peanuts, a Boy Named Charlie Brown documentary, called Vince up and said, can you cut, music for Charlie Brown, because they wanted jazz, which was real revolutionary to have a jazz soundtrack on a mainstream.
Good point.
Kids cartoon,
Right. And, I didn't know that the Cast Your Fate to the Wind was a B-side. Go figure.
Yeah, it was a B-side, a Grammy-winning B-side.
There you go. Wow,
so,
cool.
And I didn't think about it in preparing for this show, but I think when I get off here, I'm gonna go check out this other song that was the A side.
I don't know what was on the.
You know what? Okay, Samba de Opris is the name of the song.
I'll have to listen to it. I don't know that song.
I'm sure it's a great song, but in fact, Cast Your Fate to the Wind got up to number 22 on the Hot 100 on Billboard.
Wow.
Which was good, and number 9 on Easy Listening. So that's a bona fide hit right there, especially for a jazz trio.
For sure. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, this is one you wanted to talk about. Now, Cast Your Fate to the Wind is not on Charlie Brown Christmas,
right?
But it is Vince's composition. What was it about this song that really highlights parts of Vince to you?
Well, for me, it's like a window into his sort of way of working as a composer. And without getting like too geeky or too technical, I didn't realize how many sort of similarities there were between Cast Your Fate to the Wind and Linus and Lucy. And they're both in the same key. You've got the for Cast Your Fate to the Wind, right?
Yeah.
And then they both sort of sit. It's the key of A flat, but they sort of both sit in that key for a while and have this repeated left-hand figure, right? And one. And it just sits, and he has these sweet little 2-note melodies. Or Linus and Lucy, right?
All right.
So I'm starting to listen to his Grammy hit that sort of put him on the charts, and say like, oh, like here are these elements that were in that single that I don't know if he consciously borrowed and decided to sort of re-engineer some success with Linus and Lucy, or if he just sort of had some ways, an MO or ways of working. But even, I mean, both songs had this sort of. Right? You can hear these little ba ba ba, almost these little sort of Latin moments as well, or a little Latin tinge, as Jelly Roll Morton would say. But they're in both, and they both eventually lean into this real heavy swing. So the similarities, as I started listening back and forth between Cast Your Fate to the Wind and Linus and Lucy, were like really interesting to me, just as a geek for music and as a fellow composer. It was fun for me to do that deep dive.
Oh yeah. This is a real for people of just popular music. This is a jazz piece that's real digestible because of those familiar sounds like Linus and Lucy. Even though this was a predecessor, most people heard Linus and Lucy first. So it's always the song you hear first is the first song that was written. So there's a part of that turnaround. I'm no musician. There's a part of that turnaround that was, to me, was really familiar, especially with people of the early 60s listening to popular music, because and I could have the chord changes wrong. I didn't research the key.
Right.
You piano players and your flat keys. But
I know we're horrible with that, right?
I grew up.
Guitar players like
right. I cut my chops playing bass as a brand new bass player on the stage of an old country church. And
there we go.
We would get up and not know any of the songs we were going to sing. And I'd look at the piano player and she would go, that meant 3 flats, key of E flat.
There you go.
4 flats, key of A flat. And that's all I knew.
Wow. Just call the key signature and go, man.
And just go. And I made lots of mistakes, but I learned a lot too along the way. But,
that's how you do it, right?
Yeah. So as a bass player, I'm probably more comfortable playing in flat keys than in major keys.
That's really, really interesting because I'm so used to the opposite. I played guitar in high school, just like in a garage rock band, and like I was comfortable with A and D and G, and don't give me any flats or sharps, right?
Yeah.
So when I was on a string instrument there as a beginner, so kudos to you for getting all comfortable in all sorts of keys.
Well, that's the only people I could find to play with me at the time, so you just kind of have to beggars couldn't be choosers. But what I was getting back to is there's a turnaround in this song that was real familiar, and if I have it right, or if I have it wrong, I'm probably not too far off. But it's like just like a real simple, you hear it all the time, 1-5-6-5 kind of turnaround before he does that Linus and Lucy kind of bump up a bump kind of thing. And that signature, for those that don't know, were real popular in songs of the era, like Louie Louie is the same chord changes, and La Bamba and Twist and Shout is that same chord changes.
Yeah, just the
and
something like that.
Yeah. In fact, I have just that little piece right here.
Okay.
Let me make sure I have it here.
Yeah, it does sort of feel like La Bamba or something. I can hear that. Yeah.
Here you go. Right there. Kind of got that hi-hat in there. It has that La Bamba feel. And then it kind of gets just that little piece repeats several times during the song, and I think that just is enough of a recognizable melody for people that are into the pop charts at the time,
right?
To feel at home and give them something to hold on to.
Yeah, right. Just the interaction is sort of like Latin American musics, and being on the flip side of a bossa track. Right. Yeah, that moment, that was the moment what you just played on Inherit the Wind that made me start really comparing and contrasting that to Linus and Lucy, because it's such a recognizable musical gesture. I go, wait a minute, I've heard that before. And that's really what got me down this rabbit trail of us comparing these two songs.
It's really great when you really dig in the deep weeds of a song and figure out how it's composed, and be like, especially when you're in the same dealing with the same musician, because you can see their influences and how one thing led to another, how they might have wrote this one song that Cast Your Fate to the Wind is highly popular song, but hypothetically there's probably a song before this that he wrote that nobody knows of at all, but he learned some things and then borrowed and moved to this.
And even if you're not a composer, I think it's fun to see the working process, because sometimes there's a sense of mystery around creativity, right? In the sense of like somehow something just comes to you, in the middle of a dream, and it comes sort of, sometimes you get that sort of sense of inspiration and it feels like it's outside of you, but there's a lot of sort of craftsmanship and work and even recycling happening. I mean, even if you go back to like Bach and Mozart, they would take ideas and rework them and sort of rehash them and borrow from their past selves and bring those to bear on new pieces. So it's, everyone's working, and it's there's a bit more sort of elbow grease and less glamorous work involved in the composing process. So that's what I love about, doing this analysis.
I really enjoy it too. it reminded me of a little side story. I had a film class in college, and it was mid '90s, and computers were taking over the world, and people were typing everything, and my film professor was just so dumbfounded, and he's like, I can't believe it. No, he's like, all these script writers are going to be pounding everything out on computers, and then all first, second, third, fourth drafts are going to be erased, and then you're just going to end up with the final product, and it's like,
and you never get to see the sort of the making of.
You never get to see, you never have that archive of how the transition of one movie led into another, to get, because better ideas came along or certain things didn't fit right. And
that's why I love, last night I was looking at wasted time on YouTube looking at deleted scenes from the Truman Show. And it's just fun to see, like, on a movie, those didn't make the cut, but what was maybe an alternate take on a record, getting real classical. If you look at Beethoven's composition sketchbooks, it's so cool just to see like him struggle with an idea. And it's fun just to see that. I think that making up, it's like you're sort of in the kitchen with the chef, you see how the recipe's made.
Yeah. Well, that's why those like HD TV shows are so popular. People love to see the transformation, and the ideas involved. But let's move on. Let's move on to Linus and Lucy. We've talked about that, and that is probably by far his most popular work because of the Peanuts and just and again, simple does not mean easy. Approachability to this song. And as soon as you hear the first few notes, everybody knows what it is.
Right.
How many songs can you say that about? As soon as you hear the first few notes, first song that came to my mind was My Girl by the Temptations.
Right.
You hear that opening guitar lick, within 2 or 3 notes, you know exactly what it is. Linus and Lucy is in that same, you hear the first 2 or 3 notes, you know exactly what it is.
It's just like a fingerprint. Yeah, it's just
it is.
Boom.
And it's hard for songs to get in that place in the general public. There's songs that you're a fan of that you'll know, but for the general public, where you can get 99 or 999 out of 1,000 people say, I know what that song is. That's tough to do.
It's either like a really, really well-known classical piece that they may have seen like in a Bugs Bunny cartoon, or it's like a pop hit they grew up with, or it's like a classic rock song with a recognizable guitar riff, or something, Purple Haze or something.
Right. Yeah, Purple Haze would be one.
Yeah, but that's good. A very good point. Like everybody in the first few seconds is just gonna pick that out.
Yeah, it is so good. And you said that was written in A flat as well.
Yeah, same key as Inherit the Wind. So again, just another commonality. But yeah, it's just you were comfortable playing in 4 flats, but but yeah, those pianists just want to pick the crazy keys.
Yeah. When I started learning Stevie Wonder, I learned he likes those flats as well. So
for sure, yeah.
And Stevie Ray Vaughan played in E flat quite a bit, but he was able to tune his guitar in such a way.
There we go. Yeah,
he was just playing an E. So.
Another great musician. Yes. Yeah, it's such an iconic song, and like I said, I had many a private piano student who wanted to jump into that song, and they were often sort of surprised, especially as beginning piano students, because like you said, it sounded so simple. They were surprised by some of the sort of tricky things about, like, the rhythm was maybe a little syncopated and a little different than they thought it was. Or some of the little Montuno sections were, that Latin flair, weren't often in those beginning arranging books, because it's like, oh, this sounds simple, but then when you sort of get under the hood and try to recreate it for yourself, like there's something to it.
Yeah. Would you mind to give us a few bars of Linus and Lucy, just kind of get in everybody's ear?
out of my fingers tonight.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
but even just that opening little riff,
Yeah.
just sometimes you play that and that person at the piano bar is like satisfied with that, and you go on and play something else. But yeah, it's a classic.
It is a classic. When I was new to playing bass, and I always call myself a meat and potatoes bass player. I don't do a lot of crazy stuff. Mainly, I got a talent level that only has a certain ceiling, but I always enjoyed the meat and potatoes guys. But when I was kind of getting into the more the guys like Victor Wooten and Marcus Miller, that were real lead instruments on the bass, lead musicians in a band. I found Stu Hamm's Linus and Lucy, where he plays both parts, tap in on the bass.
Oh man!
And it was really, really cool. Of course, he's just a monster bass player as it is. And
that's incredible.
Yeah,
it's challenging enough on the piano, but
yeah, yeah, it is. It is really, really cool. In fact, I tell you what, I think we have time. Let me share this. Let me share you this right here. But there he is. He's playing both parts there, tapping.
Yeah, he's using some advanced techniques there to cover the whole thing. Yeah, it's not coming through too clear for me, but I can see his hands at work. And man, it's just like he's dancing on the fretboard there.
Yeah,
that's cool. I'll have to check that out. I don't know his arrangement.
Yeah, but I'll send you the link. I'll email you the link when we get off here. But yeah, I think there's one. I just grabbed the first one that popped up. There's one he does it on stage. It's a big, it's a big production there. So
and it's fun to think about. In a sense, most people know a song from the melody or the lyrics or like the highest sound you hear. But this song starts and, as like you said, has that sonic fingerprint from the left hand, that low bass, and that's such for me a characteristic of a lot of jazz music and a lot of music out of the sort of African American tradition. Is the bass is what drives the music, and that's like that mother drum, that sort of root sound is where the magic is.
Yeah, it just that bass that just kind of sits in that pocket almost the whole song. There's a little bit variation in it, but it just kind of sits there and just kind of keeps everybody at home as that dances along. And what's so crazy is it matches the cartoon of the Peanuts and the animation style so well with how the animators and Charles Schwartz made their feet shuffle, and the piano part. I assume that the animation was done before music was put to it. Well, I don't know that for fact.
Yeah, so I don't either.
So I don't know if it's the animators matching what Vince was doing or Vince matched, but it's like the feet shuffle with the melody line is like a perfect match when you're just walking to school or whatever they're doing, walking to the Christmas play.
That's great. It works so well. And it's interesting to think as I, check out documentaries about this whole process and piece, that the executives were scared they would bomb, and they didn't know they had a classic on their hands, but the music just supported the film so well. Yeah. And like you said, it was different for its time, but they thought it was going to be a dud, and it ended up being iconic.
Yeah. In fact, we have Coca-Cola to thank. Coca-Cola was the one who put up the money to sponsor it and said, put it on the
right. It sort of feels like, oh man, it's like it was originally one ad, just like one long ad, but it's also, again, for me, fun to think about some of the best art isn't necessarily sullied by economics, but actually happens because of economics, right? We often tend to think like, oh, if this money gets involved, with somehow like pollutes the creative process. Like, man, all the way back to Michelangelo, like you got patrons and sponsors, and they're the ones that help make the artist be creative. So anyway, at first I was like, what? Coke sponsored this, but I love it. Why not?
Yeah.
We got the soundtrack.
You have to sell that one song to make the money to make the record you want to do. It's that kind of thing. So
So yeah,
but
yeah. Thank you,
but uh,
Coke.
but unfortunately, to kind of back this off, and we've touched on this before. It's just this Peanuts special is so iconic on its own, and the music is
Hmm.
at least 50% of what makes it great. You know,
Right,
um,
right.
because it's it's half the film, and
Hmm.
it hits that nostalgia chord. Every time I see Peanuts, it could be Peanuts, it could be Snoopy in an Easter Bunny costume figurine, and I'll think Christmas. You know,
Right. It just
and
it's there.
unfortunately, we lost Vince way too soon. He was only
Mm,
47 years old in
yeah.
1976. He had a heart attack, and
Mm,
just way too soon because he went on to compose the music for all the Peanut specials.
hmm.
Between the Christmas one was the first one, and there were several in between there, and just gone way too soon, and just kind of left this um kind of legacy of this
Hmm.
you know easy to understand to the main public version of jazz that I think uh you know I don't know if people don't pick it up because they don't want to be accused of copying Vince, or if it's just something they haven't thought of, or if it was just how Vince was and you're just not going to be able to touch it again. But um I was really shocked. I'm a big documentary guy,
Yeah.
and I will watch a music documentary on any musician of any genre if I know them or not. I don't care. I just eat it up. I was
Yeah.
shocked on how little documentaries there are on Vince Guaraldi.
Yeah, you'd think there'd be more, right? Yeah.
At least one good one would be, you know, I think worth taking a dive into,
There you
you
go.
know. So if
Well,
anybody's out there listening in a documentary idea, you can have this for free,
there you go. Yeah. Take a run with
and
it.
me and Evan are available to talk about him all you want to for
Right.
free. We'll talk for free about him for your documentaries. So,
Yeah.
but man, there's a lot to touch on here on Vince, and I think we did a great job of getting a bird's eye view of him.
Mm.
Um, I want to ask you more of a general question in
Hmm.
music. Say it's Christmas time, and it's cold outside, it's dark,
Hmm.
Christmas tree's up and lit, and you need to put on Christmas song.
Hmm.
What Christmas song or artist do you go to?
Ooh, yeah. I'm trying to think. We've got a basket underneath our record player. Just again, sort of super geek out about vinyl again, but um, and there's a few that make the mix. I used to be a snob, and I got over my snobbery. So Mannheim Steamroller
Uh-huh.
has some real nostalgia for me. Um, Mahalia Jackson has this record I picked up of her singing Silent Night and a bunch of other classic Christmas carols. And
Uh-huh.
she just does her thing on it. And it is a powerful record. So that one has been in the heavy rotation last few holiday seasons. Um, Sometimes I need a little like choral music. So I'll do like Robert Shaw singers.
Right.
Um, and then I'm trying to think of any others. I came across this really interesting record that Joan Baez did
Uh-huh.
with orchestrations of all people. I don't know if you know PDQ Bach, sort of he's like was the Weird Owl of his time,
Really?
um, sort of musical satirical arrangements. But he did all of these sort of Baroque sounding orchestrations with Joan Baez singing these Christmas songs. It's a wacky, beautiful, unexpected record. So that's sort of the oddball pick.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'd say Mannheim Steamroll and Mahalia Jackson have been the two big favorites recently around Christmas time.
Oh yeah. Those sound great. I do listen to Little Mannheim. I'm a
Yeah, ain't nothing wrong.
Yep, yep. I am a Christmas podcast, and Mannheim Steamroller has like 5 of the 6 best selling Christmas albums of all time. And I listen, but I don't know. I think it was a little bit before my time.
Uh-huh.
Because Trans-Siberian Orchestra was kind of like took over. So that's really what I kind of
Right.
gravitated to.
In that same vein.
Yeah. And,
for sure.
But got to respect their ability and things. But yeah, I'll check that out. I'll especially that Joan Baez one. I'll have to check that out. I don't think I've ever heard
if you let's talk afterwards, and I'll see if I can find the exact name of the record.
Okay.
Because it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Evan, thanks so much for being here and talking a little events and Charlie Brown Christmas and about the music. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Best place to find me is just at evanmazunik.com. So that's EvanMazunik.com. And if you look online, Mazunik or Evan Mazunik, you'll find me on various social medias to varying degrees. But yeah, that's probably the best place to find more about me and my music.
And evanmazunik.com will be in the show notes in the description. So you guys just be a tap away from his website. I want to encourage you to go check out Amid from a Cold. It's a really great jazz piano Christmas album that you will enjoy all year long. And he's got other jazz music up there. And I want to encourage each and every one of you to make sure you get to your music player of choice and hit follow for Evan, for our independent musical artists. That follow on YouTube Music, Spotify, Apple Music. It really means a lot. It's like a subscribe for the YouTube channel. And just hit that follow and listen to the music and leave them a rating, because again, like the things for YouTube, those little stars do add up. It helps their music get heard by more people that have the same listening habits as you do. So Evan, again, thank you so much.
Todd, thanks so much for having me on. I've had a blast tonight.
Oh, it's been great. And remember, here at Christmas Clatter, we want you to keep Christmas hope alive every day.